the long-awaited Dragonsteel Prime is finally available for us to read. Possibly the most famous piece of Cosmere Apocrypha is available to everyone. You can listen to it for free on Brandon's YouTube channel, or if you were a backer of the Kickstarter, you can just download it and listen to it there. This is considered by Brandon like one of the first Cosmere books. It laid down the seeds for different elements that would appear in the Cosmere in the future, specifically realmatic theory. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my general spoiler-free impressions of the book, and then I'm going to move into like spoiler territory for magics and the world that exists in the book, because it's really weird and different from how the Cosmere functions now. I'm going to be talking about how certain elements of this book might actually not be canon anymore, because I cannot see a way to retroactively fit them in to how things work now. Dragonsteel Prime was written as Brandon's master's thesis. Up until now, it's only been available in the BYU library in their special collections, and you can check it out if you were a Brigham Young University student. I have a little bit of history with this book. When I was a teenager, I made some pilgrimages to the BYU library, to the basement, to read the book with some of my friends. Getting there was a lot of fun. I went once before I was 16, so we took the train, and then another time after I was 16. And both times I read it, I never got past chapter 2, just because I'm a slow reader and we didn't have a lot of time with the book in special collections. So I got to the point where they were going down the river, let's say that, so very early on in the book. Dragonsteel Prime takes place on the planet Yolen, which is where the Shattering happened. Way before that, in a Bronze Age Yolen. The planet, it consists of 3 continents, an island nation, which is Truxandos, Yolen, which has most of the kingdoms of humans, and then Uponi Shodel, which, as the name implies, is where the Shodel are from. On the border of these lands is the Shattered Plains, as seen in the Stormlight Archive, which is kind of weird because the Shattered Plains were such a huge part of the story in The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance on Roshar. So it's really weird to see them in this context, because like they function the same way, more or less, in terms of storytelling, right? Like there's a resource, a magical resource that the humans are fighting an other force to get, that they don't see as humans, they see as like as demons, as Voidbringers here, or Fane demons in Yolen. So thematically, they serve the same purpose, and a lot of the same story beats that are in Way of Kings also happen in Dragonsteel Prime. And it's just kind of startling to see how much is recycled. Before I go into the elements of the book that have been like recycled and characters that have been reused in canon Cosmere books, just my overall impressions on Dragonsteel Prime as a book, it's fine, it's good. I thought it was better than Elantris, and Elantris got published, so I don't know what that says about me. So the first half of the book, with Jarek, the main character, being taken from his lumberman village to the royal palace to be raised as essentially a noble, to prove that it is, you know, upbringing and not predetermination by the lords that determine your intelligence. It's good, but the characters, the story beats, the fridging of Jarek's all felt very tropey. I don't know, it was good, but it was very derivative of other things I'd read in the past, other fantasy books. And I didn't really start to pick up until after Jarek makes an incredibly stupid decision and part 2 of the book starts. Jarek is kind of your classic fantasy protagonist, little boy who is special. He has magic powers for whatever reason, and he gets taken from his lumberling life in the woods of Melorand, which here, taken from humble beginnings to the palace court to be raised as a noble, and he kind of is just a superhero from the get-go. Super intelligent, able to pick up on things really quickly, and can clearly keep up with the nobility's children. And then you've got your clearly bad noble, which is Kostrafen and his son Martis. Martis being worse than Kostrafen somehow. I didn't think that was possible when I was reading it for the first time. And then the princess, Korteth. King's daughter, Jarek, madly in love with her for absolutely no reason other than she's pretty. And she is mean. Korteth is mean, she's a brat. Also very tropey. Like, you could pick up Quarteth and you could place her in pretty much any fantasy YA court, and it would work the same way. She has a servant, Riala, which is Proto-Shallan, and she also has powers for an unknown reason. She's also Quarteth's slave, and Quarteth does not treat her well at all. But yeah, so that's kind of the overview of Jarrek's life at the court. King Rhodus is good. The king has a son, the heir to the throne. Gosh, I don't even remember his name at the top of my head, because he's not super important. He's used as a political bargaining chip. He has very low self-esteem, maybe some depression and anxiety in there. Yoharn, Prince Yoharn. There are lots of different kingdoms. The main kingdoms you need to know about are Kichan, Melorand, which is where Jarrek is from, Falamor, which is kind of like the highfalutin place that all people in Melorand want to be like. They want to be like the nobility in the Fallish court, the Fallon court, rather. And they're the ones on the front lines of the Eternal War of the Shodel. You also need to know about Trixandos, which is actually where Topaz/Hoid is from, which is an island nation of scholars. It's kind of like your ancient Greece or Rome at its height kind of environment. There are no slaves, there's no caste system, and it seems like a good place to be. Speaking of a caste system, most of Yolen at this time follows a very strict caste system, where breaking caste for any reason can be punished by however a nobleman wants to punish it, including death. The king of Melorand, King Rhodus, has been talking with Hoid a lot about changing this system. That's one of the reasons Jarrek got an education in the first place. He was part of a pilot program from the king where they send a scholar to a village to try and teach children. So that's pretty much just background, spoiler-free stuff. Book is fine. It's not great. Second half, in my opinion, is more interesting, but also has a couple more plot holes and problems. So, if that's all you want, pretty much entirely spoiler-free, click off this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and come back when you're done listening to Dragonsteel Prime. In later videos, depending on how this video performs, I can talk about the cultures more. There are some interesting cultural quirks across the kingdoms, like the Antoles. There's some unique flora and fauna on Yolen, even though it's pretty much entirely an Earth analog. All that stuff comes from Uponi Shodel, that magical beasts. All right, spoiler time. I'm almost done with my second read-through of this, so if there's some information that I get wrong, sorry, book is new. I've gone through it twice, and I've done my best to take notes on these little magical quirks and deities. I've got my awakened tablet here, because I need to read something for you real quick. So these are the characters, concepts, and places that I have noticed are reused later in the Cosmere. So the Shattered Plains, that's probably the biggest one. Bridge 4 exists in this book. The war camps, divided by how seriously they take their jobs, essentially. There's like a proto-Sadius and a proto-Dalinar type war camp situation going on. Frost is around and plays a pretty big role behind the scenes, I think. Gaz Gallant, Hoid, a Proto-Shallan, as I mentioned before, Riala. Rock is around, which is interesting. Lopen, Teft, Ham in name only, Zeth in name only, and Hoid being into hanging out with monarchs to dismantle caste systems. Just reused, straight up. Spoiler time. So what I was most interested in on my second read-through was understanding the lore and the magic more, because there's a lot of really weird things that could have big implications in the future of the Cosmere if they remain canon. There's also dummy powerful Yolish magic that we know still exists in the Cosmere, but unclear if it is in its same overpowered state, if that makes sense. Like, let's start with microkinesis. Microkinesis is what Jarrek, Riala, and even Hoid can do to some extent. It is kind of like a realmatic kind of magic. Like, realmatic theory is more or less the same in this book. There's the 3 realms of existence. It's not really like different planes, it seems like. It's just layered on top of each other, kind of amorphous like the spiritual realm. Doesn't seem like the cognitive realm as in Shadesmar exists in this book. But Jarrek and other microkinetics are able to slip into what they call like a cognitive or microkinetic view, and are able to parse objects into their axial components. So like, if they were to look at this delightful fern, for example, and slipped into microkinetic view, they wouldn't see the fern per se, they would be perceiving all of like the carbon, the phosphorus, the nitrogen, just all of that. They'd be able to see it in its individual parts as fuzzy little colored dots. And depending on the type of microkinetic you are, determines what you can do. So like Jarek seems to have the ability to divide things. He has destructive microkinetic abilities. He can look at this fern, identify the carbon, and demand it to split. Now, he's not splitting like the strong nuclear force, you know, the stuff that binds all of the protons, neutrons, and electrons together. He is having them move away. So it's more like he's able to influence how much energy is in that system. Like, we can see weak microkinetics with Tamu Keks and the Horror Watchers. They're able to wave the Tamu Kek and light a candle because they're able to excite the axis in the candle wick. But Jarek is strong enough, at times, that he could just command it to disintegrate, which is very, very overpowered. There's also no investiture in this book. Like, that term doesn't come up at all. People are just able to use their magic without having it come from a source except for Hoid, which is just incredibly overpowered, because like that is one of the things that Rasharan stone shaping, which is a form of microkinesis, is limited by. In the case of Rasharan microkinesis investiture, you just can't do it. There's also no prerequisite, it seems, to using microkinesis on Yolen. Jarek can just do it for whatever reason. So I don't know. I cannot see that one behaving the same way as it does in the current Cosmere, because that would just be incredibly overpowered. Riala, she's also microkinetic, but she can see photons, which sounds really stupid because that is how you see everything, like light reflecting off of this delightful fern into my eyes. Riala is able to perceive the light as its particle, wave, and ray. She's able to visualize light bouncing and the trajectory that it takes. She's able to bend light around her, and most powerfully, she seems to be able to condense light into a destructive laser. She only does this once in a very desperate time of need, but it just like straight up kills a guy. That's so powerful. And we know that light weavers in the Cosmere now, at least Rasharan light weavers, can theoretically do this. There's a wob about it, I'll try and find it later. And we also know that Hoid has Yolish light weaving, and that Yolish light weaving is a thing that continues to exist in the modern Cosmere. That other light weaving magic systems that shards have created have been inspired by what they've seen on Yolen. But when we've seen Hoid use Yolish light weaving in the past, it's way weaker than Rasharan light weaving. In Warbreaker, for example, he's able to make pictures out of the dust this dust in the sand that he drops when he's telling stories. In Way of Kings or Words of Radiance, I forget which one, he's able to make pictures form in the smoke. He's using microkinesis to shape the particles that he's telling the story with, and from my understanding, that's been what we've called Yolish light weaving, even though it just seems like weak microkinesis. So that's microkinesis, and it's just weird that even those handful of characters can do it, because in the prologue to this book, we are told that humans have been forbidden magic for thousands of years. We learn this when some dragons appear to the Lord of the War on the Shattered Plains at the beginning of the book, and they say, "The world is changing, we are leaving and abandoning the Shodel." And so they do. And after that, humans start getting microkinetic abilities, at least a couple of them. The next bit of magic I want to talk about is the Sai, which is spelled really weird, but in the audiobook it's pronounced like Sai. Yeah, in the book it's spelled really weird. It's like with a TZAI or something like that. I listened to the audiobook, I'm sorry. I'll look it up and put it on screen here. But the Sai are able to train themselves to focus their cognitive aspects to do incredible things. Like they're able to leap over chasms. They're able to move faster than the speed of sound at times, like when they concentrate their entire energy into one movement. And they're also apparently able to damage the spiritual aspects of different things. Now, I could see a form of this existing in the current Cosmere. I think being able to focus your cognitive aspect while it is still, attached to your body could allow you to do some things that are more extreme than what the average human is able to do. But I cannot possibly see this ability working the same way, especially in regards to damaging the spiritual aspect of things. Because theoretically, anyone could do this. They just need the training, which is insane, that amount of power just in the hands of anybody in the Cosmere. Along the same lines of cognitive magic, we have the Shodel. They have a different kind of illusion magic than light weaving, which is projecting thoughts and impressions into people's minds, making them essentially hallucinate something in front of them that is so real that their body reacts to it. So let's say there is a beast that a Shodel projects into the mind of a bridgeman. If they get stabbed by this projection, their body will react as if they were actually stabbed because of how powerful the impression that the Shodel are projecting is. This is called cognitive magic in book. And I can see the Shodel having a form of this in the modern Cosmere. We do know that their Tamu Keks allow them to communicate basically faster than light with dragons. They're able to pray to dragons that they worship from anywhere in the Cosmere and get an instantaneous response. That's why Shodel are so helpful in the cognitive realm, especially when you need to get a message. They can use dragons as essentially telecommunications hubs if they're willing. The outlier to all this magic stuff is Hoid. Hoid goes by the name Topaz in this book, and he's just as amazing as ever. I love Hoid in this book. He's probably my favorite character, honestly, and I can see why he's been used so much in the Cosmere since then. But he goes by the name Topaz in this book because he wears a large ring with a large topaz in it that glows. And he also has the torment that he has later from holding a Dawnshard, so it's heavily implied that he has a Dawnshard here. Brandon even says as much in the foreword. It's just different than how it is now. It seems to be the command of grow. He's able to make plants and even cells of living things grow. And he also has the same torment where he can't fight, he can't even eat meat without throwing up. He's just good. I was hoping we'd see more Dawnshards than that, because in the foreword, Sanderson also says you see at least one Dawnshard in here, although it behaves differently than it does in the modern Cosmere. And for a while, I was thinking that it probably has to do with the other microkinetics we see, because they each have a little bit of a different flavor. So Jarek could be decay, and Riala could be illuminate or whatever. But I don't think that's actually the case, because there are more microkinetics in the world than just Jarek, Riala, and Topaz. Lord Aranak seems to have some of those. Speaking of Hoid, and Aranak for that matter, it leads to probably the weirdest thing in terms of implications to the larger Cosmere. Hoid has a couple of goals in this book. He wants to find microkinetics, and he wants to prepare the world for some unspecified calamity to come that he thinks is related to one of the gods of lore. Yolen has many different religious traditions, and in Yolen specifically, there are 9 lords, or 9 deities that they pray to. But Hoid suspects that these have branched off from real beings and real legends, and he's determined that there are 5 of them. So his quest in this book is to find the names of the 5 original real gods. And he's pretty quickly able to find 4, and spends the last half of the book trying to find the 5th. These gods are Salonis, Ethane, Darus, Rafit, and Aranak. Aranak being the one that he couldn't find. There's also a divine being that keeps appearing and causing a little bit of chaos with Hoid. And he describes himself as Orion the White, who is seen as the kind of principal god amongst most of the Yolish people. So that is one confirmed divine being. In the Horwatcher's Acrobola, Hoid encounters another one of these divine beings, Salonis. So that's 2. When the dragon Drathafrast saves the bridgeman from the Lord of the War about halfway through the book, the dragon calls the Lord of the War Ethane. So that's 3 gods. And at the very end of the book, the priest Wat from Jarek's original village is revealed to be one of these gods forced into human form and promising not to use his power. And this is Darus. So we see 4 of these. And on top of that, Orion is most likely Aranak. That is the final name that Hoid finds, which is particularly interesting because the ruler of the Send Empire is named Aranak, and he's instituted all of these changes and quality of life has gone way up, and he's planning to invade Yolen. So, there are 5 gods. We see 4 of them on page, and they're all siblings, and they have made specific promises about when it's okay to use their powers and when it's not. Aranak seems to be violating his oath. When Darus violates his oath to save Jarek, he just vanishes. Like, painfully, he lets out a wail of pain and then just vanishes. So he's gone, it seems. They're all siblings, and they also talk about their father. Who is this father deity? Is it Adonalsium? Did Adonalsium create 5 child gods? I think that these 5 deities are dragons. They created the Shodel. They are the Shodel's gods, and the Lord of the War seems to be protecting his creation from the humans. Another reason I think they're dragons is because Aranak listens to the dragons. The ones that appear to him when he's in his human form, he talks to them as if they're his peers. Drathafrast sounds a lot like Frost to me, and he only appears when Frost is around. So I do think that Frost is one of these deities in disguise. Now, if that's the case, then dragons are completely overpowered, right? Like, they cannot function like this in the modern Cosmere. Because dragons, they're a species, right? They can reproduce, they can have children, and if they're all on, like, what appears to be almost shardic levels of deity, able to just appear as divine beings, that's insane. So, I don't know. Are the 5 deities dragons? Are they a sub-god created by Adonalsium, their father? I don't know. And the thing is, we never will know. That is probably one of the most frustrating things about reading Dragonsteel Prime. You don't know how much is canon, you don't know what is canon, and you don't know what could be canon with some changes. These are questions that we just will never have the answer to. It is unclear if Brandon will answer questions about this when asked. Maybe, now that it's released, he'll answer questions about Dragonsteel Prime. He'll clarify what is canon and what is not. But I think Sanderson says it best when he's talking about what this book is. It is not but a curiosity. It is an interesting read, but very difficult to glean anything canonical from it. It provides an interesting view into what the Cosmere could have been, what it was imagined to be at the very beginning, and there certainly are elements from this book that have gone on to be Cosmere mainstays, primarily realmatic theory and dragons and the show, but it really is just a curiosity. All right, well, if you enjoyed this video and if you enjoyed this video and are enjoying Cosmere content, please subscribe, like, leave a comment down below. What do you think those 5 divine beings are? Are they dragons? Are they proto-shards? Are they sub-gods created by Adonalsium? Or do you have your own theory about them? I'd love to hear about it and discuss it down below. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Have an excellent time of day, and I will see you next time. All right, bye. Where am I right now? Doesn't really matter so long as you like and subscribe. See you guys next time.